Hello everyone, this is CinemaBigWaves here with Rings of Power Season 1 review. Please don't forget to subscribe our channel. Well, the first season of this huge series, which also holds the title of the most expensive series in the history, was aired. Now we can talk about this series in a more general and critical way. If I want to say my general opinion, I have to say that it was disappointing and I expected more. Of course, I think my expectations were not unreasonable considering the complete world of Tolkien and the beauty of Peter Jackson's trilogy and the huge budget of this series. In my opinion, a little more work should have been done on the screenplay and the directing style of the series. We'll talk about that more. Considering the relatively long duration of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is about 10 hours, and the fact that both works are for the same world and share a number of characters, this series can be compared to the trilogy in some parts. First, let's check the story in terms of narration and screenplay. The plot in some parts, especially its storyline of Harfoots, was slow to narrate. If we take a moment to think about the storyline of the Harfoots, nothing special happened, and the only reason it was discussed was that the incident of the meteorite falling was in the first episode, and the writers wanted all the storylines to go almost parallel. In terms of dialogue, the series did not have outstanding dialogues, and compared to the trilogy, which dialogues were good and impressive. Perhaps one of the reasons is that all the dialogues of the series were written by the authors themselves. But in the trilogy, most of the dialogues were written by Tolkien himself, and Peter Jackson did not make many changes. From the point of view of the characterization, since most of the characters in this season are in the introducing stage, you can criticize them negatively, but there was room for the characters to go out of the typical mode and become a little more unique. For example, Nuri's character or Elendil's character seemed very typical and no creativity was done in their depiction. Or Durin's character was almost the same as Gimli, which of course reminded Gimli's sweetness, but in addition to that, this also shows the lack of creativity of the authors. It is also interesting to know that some of the characters have changes in their background compared to Tolkien's books and are different from the original. This point is sometimes good and sometimes bad. For example, we know that Sauron came in the form of an elf in the book and was able to fool others, but in the series he came in form of a human. In the first place, this point may be liked by the viewers who know the story. But on the other hand, like the characters in the story, he may be deceived by Sauron's appearance. This is a positive point, but it is not perfectly executed because based on the dialogues given to him and the relationships he has with the other characters, almost from the middle of the series, everyone guessed who Sauron is.
Who are you?
Well, let's go to the style and production and design. In terms of direction, it can be said that there is no news of Peter Jackson's original and impressive images in the series. The direction is very ordinary, but standard. Of course, if you haven't seen the trilogy, the direction could be acceptable, but after watching the series, Peter Jackson's directing experience comes alive for us, and this makes the direction of this series seem disappointing. Good and believable special effects. Of course, considering its huge budget, nothing else was expected. Also, the design of the scenes, clothes and the decorations are magnificent and beautiful, but they are not unique. In terms of combat situations, it seems very weak. This is a big weakness because many viewers expected to see good and epic war scenes like Lord of the Rings, but the series disappointed them. The music in the series is used enough, but there is no mention of Howard Shore's magnificent compositions and notes, and it is not memorable. Compared to similar series like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, it is extremely ordinary and cannot be compared. In my opinion, one of the reasons for the lack of impact of the soundtrack of the series is its excessive conservatism and lack of distinctive melody. The trilogy was full of long-lasting melodies, but in the series more general themes and short Hollywood themes are used. In terms of casting, unfortunately, this series does not get an acceptable score. One of the main problems was the wrong choice of the actress for the character of Galadriel, who is also the main character of the series, who does not fit the role at all. Unfortunately, she's constantly compared to the legendary Kate Blanchett in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But on the other hand, there are good choices such as Nazanin Bonyadi in the role of Bronwyn. The actors who play the role of Adar and Durin and his wife, who have an interesting relationship, these weigh the bottom of the scale to the good side. But the series does not have an interesting casting in general, unlike the trilogy where the characters were chosen to be extremely attractive and later they became famous and played in other movies and series. Generally speaking, it can be said that the series is less effective for those who have not seen the trilogy and do not know the characters, and on the other hand, it is disappointing for those who like the trilogy. It should be seen whether the creators can turn this case in their favor in the next season or whether they will have a terrible miscarriage. In the next season, there are many events to take place, such as Farazun's gaining power, Sauron making the Rings of Power and offering them to humans, Gandalf and Nuri's journey, Adar and orcs gaining power, Sauron and Adar's relationship, the destruction of Khazad-dûm by Balrog. Let's see if these events can save the series and how many of these events we will witness in the next season. In general, at least from the first season, it seems that we are not dealing with a memorable and long-lasting series. We hope that in the next season, which will probably come in early 2024, the producers will compensate for these weaknesses and make some fundamental changes. Write us in the comment section, what do you think about the first season of The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power? How do you think the next season will be? And as always, thanks for being with us.